Hey, everybody, welcome back. I've been gone for about a month, so it's been forever. It's good to be here. I enjoyed getting ready for tonight and I miss my people. So it's good to see all of you and those on YouTube. Please join us any Thursday. No, I do that every week, every time, not any Thursday, twice a month. And if you want to see the schedule, it's up on Facebook. Please reach out to me and enjoy this lovely group because we have some great people here. So tonight's topic is one of my favorites, and I learned so much about it all the time. And in getting ready for tonight, I got even more insight. And one of my favorite things that happened today, one of the best things that's happened lately is the use of technology for me and how I'm so thankful for it. So here I am getting ready for tonight and thinking about the eighth house and all of its meaning. And I go into my computer and I used to meet with Rick once a week and I have all those recordings and they're such a gift to me. But I happened to click on one and it was one where he was talking to me about how to use my power and how perfect it was for tonight to have a conversation like that. And I felt like he was talking to me about tonight. And I have been enjoying his rapport with me lately because I feel like I can sense him around me. And I am continually, just grateful for him and missing him. So it's
The
actually one of
otherworldly
the,
contact is a wonderful blessing, isn't it?
yes, and how. I
Yeah.
mean, truly. Um, and actually, I do want to just remind us, everybody here, for those that are local to the Pittsburgh area, and those that are not, two things. Number one, please let me know, or Rick, um, Cempie, um,
Hmm.
if you're coming to Rick's celebration of life, which is May 25th, in the town where he lived, Periopolis. If you are doing that and you've written to me in the Facebook page, so I've got your name if that's the case. But if you haven't, please let me know because we're trying to get a really good head count of his astrology people. And then for those of us that want to do a little message um, that we can compile, please reach out to me or Rick. We still have time to do that, but we do need to do it because before you know it, it'll be here and we need to compile it. And John will help us with that. But I want to remind you that that's an option if you do want to take it for those that are out of town or for those that are there as well. It's just it'll be really nice to have that memory of all of you guys talking about how he impacted your life.
I think too, it'll also be nice for Liza to have that.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I Are you kidding? I had to hold back today from calling her because I had to go to a meeting for work, but it just like what a gift to have this technology that allows us to have this memory of
Hmm.
somebody that meant so much to us. And even I lost my mother a year ago and I have so many videos of her and pictures and I just think, oh, it's priceless now. It really is
Hmm.
priceless to me. um, so with that, why don't we get started? And I do want to say we have somebody here tonight who had a brilliant idea, which was to bring this idea to us, which is, can we talk about the eighth house? So if you guys have a topic that you want to talk about, please bring it to our attention because we're consistently trying to find new ways of, going into different angles at astrology. And there's so many different topics, but a lot of them we've talked about. But sometimes you talk about things and it's good to have a refresher, and it's also good to have other people's perspective on it. Um, for example, you'll see in tonight's examples, we'll talk about some charts that are eighth house heavy and what that does to us. But here's the thing, before I get started, is we all have an eighth house. You don't have to have
Sure.
any planets in the eighth house. You don't have to be a Scorpio to understand this. There's really not much in astrology that stands on its own because you have to consider the whole chart. So even if you have an interception in your chart, meaning that it kind of gets swallowed up and it looks like you don't have an eighth house, you have an eighth house. We all have an eighth house. Rick happens to have Saturn in his eighth house along with Chiron. That's pretty significant. I don't have anything in my eighth house. Jane may have nothing, but that doesn't mean that is not meaningful to listen to this, because it is really meaningful, because I can promise you, you're feeling it. So I'm going to share my screen. Wait, first I have to do this. And then I have to share my screen.
The other things about enjoying those topics that other people will bring to our attention is that they really are so focused, they're bringing questions that other people are going to share. So it'll make a vital discussion.
Definitely. There's things that, especially in a group, yeah, there's things that people bring up that I wouldn't even think of, or I just haven't thought about it in that way before.
I want
So
to throw out a thank you and a welcome to Debbie, who's a first-time visitor to the podcast, and
welcome.
Carly has had awareness of it. But Carly, is this your first time also to actually be here?
I believe this is my first time for this
I think
specific
so.
cast, but I did do like the spa once,
Sure.
the spiritual spa. But this is so interesting. I was looking at my eighth house and I'm ready.
Good idea.
Yes, that was actually something I wanted to mention. I wanted to, because I'm going to talk about something in a couple of slides, and I want you to make sure that you know what is the sign on the cusp of your eighth house as we walk through this. But I'll leave you with that just for a minute. So the eighth house in the chart is up, as remember how I always talk about, there's 6 pairs, right? So let's think about the eighth house. And what's opposing the eighth house? It's house number 2. So the second house looks at the eighth house, and they're both, these houses are, the eighth house is a more wider, deeper version of what you would do in the second house. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's naturally ruled by Scorpio. And it's the modern ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. The traditional ruler is Mars. And it's worth mentioning both because Pluto definitely rules Scorpio. But if you are a Scorpio ascendant, I would use Mars as the ruler of your ascendant, not Pluto. Now you can play around with those two, but usually an outer planet is not really to be used as the ruler of the ascendant. You want to use a personal planet. But regardless, these 2 planets rule the sign of Scorpio, and they're some of the, they are tough, resilient, don't mess with me sort of energy. That's for sure. Beautiful energy in and of itself in its unique way, but this is not Neptune or Venus. This is very different. So if, I dabble a little bit in tarot, and I'll let Rick talk about this card, but the death card is usually associated with this house, I mean, with the sign of Scorpio. And in numerology, it's said it's the I think of it as infinity. I think of it as transformation and infinity, basically we don't really die. We go into another form of energy. And I'm not sure if Rick has anything to add in terms of the tarot.
Yeah, most frequently, there is always, even if there on some rare occasion there may be a death associated, the real big meaning behind this card is regarding transformation. There is going to be a change. So in regard to that, that's where it really connects with its eighth house connection as far as death, because death, be it near or far, it is something that is very transforming. So because of that, I just wanted to throw some words out there, and we can talk more about them later if it comes up. These are looking at the process of transformation. So the illusion of stability is one of the first parts of the process. Then we also then encounter a descent into the unknown with eighth house themes.
Mm-hmm.
And after we have this grasp of what the nature is of the particular unknown, then we can experience an alchemical process. From the alchemical process, the next part of the transformation is emergence into something new or evolved, and then empowerment, because you are more capable as you emerge.
Yeah.
And then the final part of that process of transformation is a reminder that there is often recurrence because it has a cyclic nature. So
Mm-hmm.
what you transform once, you should never be surprised if you're going to be transforming it again later. You may have some repeat experiences because your chart is your chart for your whole life.
Yeah. Rick, I love that. I may ask you to, do you have that to put in the chat?
I will go ahead and do that. How about closer towards the end?
Yeah, because I really love that. I want to read that again. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, there's even more in the expanded version. I was just hitting highlights.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite things about this house. This is why this is one of my favorite houses, because of the capacity that we all have for transformation or to alchemize something within us or in our lives. And that is so beautiful. And to me, that is so powerful. It's so beautiful that once you get that, it changes you, because you kind of become less of a, you become kind of like the empowered to your own self. And that's incredible. I remember when I was going through my divorce, I had both Saturn and Pluto going through my eighth house. And I remember being aware, thankfully, being aware, oh, this is, I can, lay down and cry for a bit, but this is really about me absolutely coming into my power and transforming. I've never really been the same since. I mean, that you can say that about a lot of events. So I'll give you that. But what I mean is I was aware of it, and I was so thankful that I was aware of it, instead of just, oh, how can this happen to me? Life is so hard, that kind of thing. Um, thank you for that, Rick. So the eighth house is what we call a set of the succeedent houses. So those are the houses that help you develop the prior house. So it's the second, progressing on the 1st, the 5th progressing on the 4th, the 8th progressing on the 7th, the 11th progressing on the 10th. So the 8th house is where we really fully become that bonded couple that you did, or that contract in the 7th house, for example. So it's more intimate. It's more intimate in every way. It's not just, it's everything about it is way more intimate, everything. There's nowhere to hide. And it's no longer just about the wedding day and about the fluff of it. It is the real deal. And it's not pretty oftentimes. And it's one of the things that this house is going to impose on you constantly. I probably shouldn't use the word impose, but some of us are a little resistant to certain things, but it's going to insist that you be real with yourself, with your spouse, with your family. And the realness sometimes is really very intimate and wonderful, but it can also be where you kind of see your shadow side. You see the stuff that's like, oh, I need to work on that.
Shadow work actually is encompassed within
Yeah,
the 8th house as well.
definitely. So, and it's the 8th house has a fixed nature to it. And you know what? Good thing it does. Because if we wanted to run away from a marriage the minute it got hard, we would all be,
Single.
we would all be single often. But yeah, the fixed nature of this house, these houses, is what keeps you working at it, what keeps the glue of it. In this case, we're talking about marriage and intimacy, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be about other topics relating to the 8th house. I'm just saying that it's really where, if you want to look at marriage, this is the 8th house. The 7th house is your actual partner, or where you are one-on-one with another. So let's talk about let me move my slide here. Okay. So we started to throw out some words. And I'm going to give you some more to chew on. So the first one, it's one of the money houses. So the 2nd house, like we talked about in the first few minutes, the 2nd house is about the money that you make, the value that you have, that you feel, that you bring, the salary you make. It can be about your family as well. This is more expanded money. This is the money with your spouse. It's a shared money. It's you and the bank. It's you and the IRS. It's you and an inheritance. It's shared money that you may not have had anything to do with building, but it will come to you. Some people have, they may get a chunk of money from an inheritance. I'd like to look at, if somebody ever had that, do they have anything in the 8th house? Not everybody gets a big, significant
Windfall.
inheritance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in any case, it's one of the money houses. So when people talk to me about money, I'm going to want to look at the 2nd and the 8th house. I'm going to want to look at the ruler of the 8th house.
Investments would also be involved in that.
I know,
because it's a conversion of your money into property. It's just a different currency for this word, power, because your money is an external representation of the power you have expended to garner the money. So your wages, what you earn, what your salary is, what you charge if you're, independently working is completely a reflection of the power that you brought to you.
Big time.
Yeah.
This is one of the main words for this house is power. And like I said a few minutes ago, Rick talking to me about how I'm using my power. This is so big. Being conscious of how you're using your power. When you have a transit and it's somehow affecting your eighth house, so the ruler of your eighth house, or let's say you have the moon in your eighth house, or you have whatever, that's you're gonna, something or someone is asking you, what is it internally that is keeping you from your own power, or how are you expressing that power? And obviously, and we know this in our modern world, or even not in the modern world, money is tied to power. It just is. The power it takes to make the money, to keep the money, the status. We can talk about what that looks like, but really, we all know, the quote unquote power. Now, is that real power when you have more money? Not necessarily at all. But to some, it may look like it. And this house is real. That's one thing about this house. This is the opposite of fluff. So where you are not using your power or don't feel empowered, this house is going to test you when you have something triggering it. The next one is sex, but it's not the kind of sex, people always say, oh, Scorpios, they're just all about sex. It's when you don't know astrology, then you think that way. Because it's not that Scorpios may enjoy sex and may have an affinity for sex, but that is really, it's a lot more to this. It means a lot more in this house. The eighth house is really about trust, about merging, and sex becomes something else. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think it's always beautiful. Some of it is probably, there can be a dark aspect of it. Not everybody is going to walk around with these high values, right? But it is, and sex has been known to be used as a power thing, it can be.
A tool.
Yeah. So all these things are really interconnected, and they're always interconnected. So when we talk about the sex aspect of this, it's really not just, it's not fifth house sex. It's very almost, it can be like otherworldly, but it could also have a dark aspect to it. However you choose to use that, take that, it's up to you, but that's the truth of what this house expresses.
I would like to say, since you brought up the fifth house,
Yeah.
that as fifth house is to a relationship that is romantic,
Mhm.
and the seventh is more for something that is long lasting.
Right.
There is a difference in the sex that comes out of the fifth or the seventh based on intensity, loyalty, fidelity, purity.
Yeah.
Things that are long haul traits, and things that expose the truth of those and the
Yeah.
falsehood.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's such a good point. Because
That's where illusion, that
yes.
first element,
Yeah.
is part of it, because you know how people are told that you don't know what it's like until you're married or until you live together. There is such an exposure of identity when it is shared in that daily contact, that you start to see certain things that are
Mhm.
repeated, and you can be charmed even deeper,
Right.
falling deeper into love, or you can be driven absolutely mad
Yeah.
by the foibles.
Yeah. And yeah, that's so true. And it's yeah, I guess it's what I said before. It doesn't, this is the real deal of relationship. I remember Rick saying, if you want to know, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he goes, you know, you want to know relationship, talk to a Scorpio. That doesn't mean every Scorpio is going to know how to do relationships. What I mean is there's something in there. I think what he was talking about is they're going to want to get to the meat and the vulnerability and the trust that it takes to have something real. Usually we're talking about intimate partner here, but even with just as a friendship, it just as a in your family, it doesn't have to be your spouse. Because people talk about Libra being the relationship, and I'm not saying that it isn't, but this is a different level. Like Rick was just saying, that you can't run away from an everyday person and their habits and their realness. You're faced with it when you're married.
Yeah, even
So
a business partner that may be ruled by the seventh house, you are finding their real places of contact, but it's not like living with them.
right, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
So yeah.
So back to the card we saw in the previous slide. This house, people talk about it as if it's the house associated with death. Now, that doesn't mean it's actual physical death. It means possibly the transformative power that death can bring, a death of a habit, a death of a trauma, a death of a way of being.
The death of an illusion,
Yeah.
which is what sets you on to transformation.
Yeah. So death in all aspects, death and all the dark night of the soul that can bring, plus the healing. Let me just click the next one, because really that's what it leads to, is transformation. And if you've ever had a transit that is hitting something that's aspecting the eighth house or your Pluto, you have no choice but to kind of crumble. And if you don't, you resist, it's going to end up being a lot longer or harder, because it's almost meant to have you face that part of yourself that has been so underneath the surface. So it wants you, the soul knows to bring it out. The soul knows it's time, it's needed now. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to continue in this way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And John is here. So yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest aspects. I mean, I used to be scared of Pluto. I'm no longer scared of Pluto transits, which is good because I have some coming up. But Pluto squares can really bring you to your knees. And when you get the juice of what it's trying to do with you, this is why I just love astrology, because I continuously see the juice of what it's doing in my life.
Put your phone number in for me?
Okay, I muted her. Okay, let's continue. Psychology. So remember, we're going back again to what's underneath all this? What's underneath this eighth house where you have, I don't know, either planets or you just happen to have Sagittarius on the eighth house cusp. Or it doesn't matter what sign. What that's going to inform you to some level of your own psychology, or where you're, how much you're willing to look at that shadow part of yourself. It can be a house with that deals with trauma, with crisis, with difficult stuff. As much as now it's intense, and they use the word intense for a reason when they talk about Scorpio. So to those of you that are here, I mean, most of you know this stuff, but I use the word Pluto and Scorpio and eighth house because they're all connected. So Scorpio rules the eighth house, which is ruled by Pluto. So it's all interchangeable. So psychology is one of those things that isn't right in your face. You know, somebody can walk into this room and look a certain way and act a certain way, and I would have no idea that they actually have an eating disorder. I would have no clue. But this is the house where when you come in contact with somebody on a much deeper level, there is no hiding it. Or if they do, which this can be the house of secrets, which is my next word. It can be, again, it can be dark, and it doesn't always have to be, but secrets for what reason, you know? We could also just say the things that people don't openly talk about, or are not comfortable revealing. It's a vulnerable place. This is why it's my favorite place. I love this stuff. Trauma healing. This is this is why I say crisis, trauma, but it's also the place that can lead to healing, along with the 12th house that can open the door to that. You can't really open the door without seeing the problem first, but it'll open the door. And that's a gift. I used to know an astrologer that used to say, you have a lot of things in your chart that may challenge you, but I promise you the key is also in your chart. The key to healing and the blessings and the gifts, they're somewhere in there as well. It just, we have to find them.
If I might also share on trauma healing,
Mhm.
trauma is achieved through imposition of power on another. So when you have this experience that comes out of the seventh house of shared power, sometimes that power is sharing your trust. A culture and society tell us that our parents and families are supposed to be safe spaces.
Mhm.
And we share that and we yield our trust to those people who can in turn then have the power to traumatize. So there is a unique place to find things of betrayal through that eighth house as well. The open enemies are also in the seventh house.
Right.
So you may see that there is something connecting those things that you have yielded, things that you have shared,
Yeah.
and trust is one of them.
Huge. Yeah. It's really something to think about. The level of trust that you have with someone and that you give to someone, to that extent is the extent to which they can also harm you. I guess that's why it's risky, but yeah, trust is a big part, a big part of this house, this whole Scorpio thing. So, like I was saying, people always say, well, Scorpios like sex. Well, Scorpios, are very actually quite loyal, because I've had people say to me, oh, if you have a lot of Scorpio, that means you're not loyal. But in fact, it's not necessarily true. I'm not saying that that's the case in every story, because everyone's different, but overall, Scorpio is big on trust, and they do not trust easily. So if they trust you, you take that seriously, because they want to be, people tend to treat you the way they want to be treated, subconsciously or consciously. So that trust goes both ways, and betrayal is something that they wouldn't do easily, because they don't want it done to them either. It's betrayal is, I remember I had a Scorpio girlfriend who, I mean, the idea of betrayal to her, like, it didn't even matter if it was something small, like, oh, that girl took my pen or something. It was like a big offense. And I really saw a lot of that scorpionic energy. I mean, Scorpio can harm you. An actual scorpion can really bite you, can really hurt you. And I was reminded, because she didn't present to me like a Scorpio at all. So it kind of reminded me, wow, and then I looked at her chart, and she had like almost everything in Scorpio. Almost everything in her chart was in the Scorpio. Okay, metaphysics. I think we probably all know, and we've if you're listening to this right now, it's very likely that you're familiar with this. Is that this is a very metaphysical house. This is a house that can be associated with mediumship, with the other world, the other realm.
Alchemy,
Yeah,
hauntings.
big time. All this stuff, all these things that it's not like you're going to go to the mall and there's going to be like some store where this is the house where you talk amongst yourselves. Like, this is a very more of a private house. But metaphysics is really, which is one of my favorite aspects of this one. And then
It's also something that is deeper and more expansive than philosophy in general.
Yeah.
So it's this next level intimacy with reality.
Mm.
It would more likely contain elements of reincarnation.
Yeah.
Because there's this transformational process. What are you experiencing cycle after cycle?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was one of the words I meant to type in here. I probably got distracted, but reincarnation is, again, the changing of the death cycle is very active here. How things change after a certain quote unquote death. People usually, when I talk to a Scorpio person, and I happen to know that they either are a Scorpio or that they have a lot of stuff in Scorpio, I know I can talk about certain things and it's not going to seem weird to them. It's not going to seem like kooky or too much, or just too this is not a house that does mainstream stuff. Now, that can be mitigated. What if you have a lot of stuff? Ironically, I know two Scorpios that are a Scorpio, and they have Gemini rising, and they have some other stuff in different homes, different houses, that I see the variance, like the variance between the Scorpionic and the Gemini energy, which are really very different. It's like light and dark, right? Um,
I second all of that you said, Claudia, pretty much. I have extensive experience being in like with Scorpios,
yeah.
surrounded by them. My mom has a Scorpio moon, so yeah, like all the things you say, especially being able to talk with them about just about anything and it
Oh,
not sound
yeah.
weird.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
almost normal to them, and they I think in some ways they think you're weird if you don't want to talk about some of the things that they want to talk about.
Yeah. Which is great. Those are my favorite kind of conversations.
Yeah.
Uh, and then we talked about inheritance too. Inheritance, which is ironically another element of death. Now,
Well, and shared power,
yeah,
because you're sharing with
yes,
the family
yes,
line.
and when we talk about death, I remember years and years ago, many years ago, even before I was really into astrology, I remember I knew a young woman that was studying to be a mortician. And it was a few years later, and then I started looking at charts, and I saw something that kind of made me realize, wow, okay, no wonder. So it doesn't have to be death itself. It doesn't have to be death itself or you dying. Perhaps you work in hospice, um, or something where you are in some capacity in dealing with death or an aspect of death. It's fascinating. So I'm going to stop sharing. That's where I end my slides, but we are going to look at some examples. So I gave you guys a little bit of homework. I'm not looking at the chat, but I'll get to it in 1 second. Does everybody know what sign is on the cusp of their 8th house?
Mhm.
Can I just say, Claudia, sorry, I thought when I looked down at my chart, I thought that I was looking at the 8th house, but I was looking at the 9th. So I just blame my glasses. So I actually do have Jupiter in my 8th house. So I'll shut up now, but I just thought I'd say.
Well, that's kind of nice, Jane. What sign is it in?
Is it? So it's Virgo. So 25 degrees. Hang on, let's see if my glasses are working. Yeah, 25 degrees Jupiter in Virgo. And the cusp must be Leo. Is that what you meant?
Right, Leo would be on the cusp, most
Yeah.
likely.
Yes,
And
actually.
that's got Pluto at 25 degrees, or is that 28? Gee, my glasses are bad. 28.
Well, Jane, in that regard, what would have more impact is what house is the ruler of the 8th house. So where would the sun be sitting in your chart? What house? Because
Yeah, okay.
what house is your sun in?
Aries.
So that's in the
Oh, thanks, Claudia.
yeah, so yours is in the 3rd house. So your mind and your communication are where most of your depth comes from, or manifests, comes out.
Okay.
That's where you're a heavily intellectual person in that regard. You like those strong conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
And
Oh,
that
that's
would
great.
also bring metaphysical topics. Well, no, wait a minute.
Yes.
You have Virgo on the 8th house cusp.
Right. I was just about
I'm
to
so
say that.
sorry. I didn't
That's
see
okay.
Have
that.
I got it the wrong way?
That's all
Um,
right. That's why we're doing this.
we're
So
just double checking. So Mercury is in the same house. You're still going to end up, it'll manifest the same way anyway. Because your 8th house ruler is Mercury in the 3rd house. The same, it's just coincidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
does that make
Okay,
sense,
thank you.
Jane?
I think so. And look, yeah, we'll talk about it another time, Claudia.
Yes, we will.
I'm sure we will.
Hold on. I'm
I
gonna
would
share.
also tell you on a metaphysical note, if you ever looked into developing mediumship, it could
Yes.
suggest that you would have an easier time with mental mediumship. Your brain may be the sensory organ that is enhanced, which is more, it's a little trickier to find good development teaching on that, but it's still very powerful and very capable.
That's interesting, Rick. That yeah. I find thank you.
Mhm.
That's really good.
So you see that this is where you want to look.
Okay.
And you may have been
Yeah.
hearing this already. I just want to make sure you know, like this, when I say what sign is on the cusp of your 8th house, you look at the little
Yeah,
numbers here, 1, 2, 3,
gotcha.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the cusp would be this
Yeah.
line, and then the sign right here, you'd have to know the glyphs, but this is Virgo. So
Yeah.
what planet rules Virgo? Mercury. And so then you go find Mercury right here, and it's in the 3rd house.
Okay. Okay, I see what you're doing. Thank you. That's great because I didn't realize that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you happen to find the number in the little green wheel, just go to the first line clockwise.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I just wasn't looking at it as I looked at it like Leo was the cusp rather than But thanks,
Mhm.
Claudia. That's lovely.
Yes.
And Rick.
So no problem. So I want to bring up a few samples, a few examples of
Intense, heavy 8th house
yes, right.
present
So
charts.
like we just said, like we looked at Jane's chart and she's got Jupiter in her 8th house. That's a coincidence. She happens to have a benefic and wonderful planet in the 8th house. That's not going to be you or me. Like that's not everybody. But we're going to look at a few that are heavy 8th house. And you will see these folks, there's a reason why they're on this, they're known because 8th house is serious business. So I was sharing and then I stopped sharing and I'm going to share again. Oh, are you seeing my screen?
We're seeing a chart that you could blow up, maybe.
Yeah, I see it, Claudia.
You see
There you
Frank
go.
Roosevelt?
Yes.
Okay. Look at this 8th house. This man, now, okay, I'll be honest. I don't know much about him. I know that he was very tenacious. He was a strong character. He did have a very what's the word? Resilient spirit.
What is the nature? Who was Frank Roosevelt?
He was, let's Google it. I thought he was a president.
That would be Franklin Roosevelt, and
Well,
he would
I
be
found,
older than 1938.
but
Yeah,
I
I thought he
found,
was an Aquarius, Franklin Roosevelt, or
well,
president.
this Frank Roosevelt, where was he born? In Philadelphia. So I
Yeah, and
found
this
that
is a
in
1938. He would have been too young to be president when Franklin
Could this
was
be one of his
president.
descendants? I mean, I think he's
maybe.
a couple generations.
So here's the thing. In solar fire, I don't want to go into it right now because I have to go back in the menu.
Right.
I typed in 8th house, certain planets in the 8th house, and I found that sometimes the names are not how we know them. So I didn't look at 1938. But regardless,
This
this
is an
fellow
intense chart.
this fellow's not who I thought he was then. But regardless, now I want to go look at who he is. If somebody can Google him, Frank Roosevelt, I'm going to see if I can find, there's a category. Usually they give you like writers, politicians. That's all I'm going to know about him, based on the solar fire search. But anyway, this eighth house is really, really strong because you've got both rulers of the eighth house and the sun in the eighth house. I wouldn't even, I mean, it's in Cancer, which is a way softer energy. However, it's still in the eighth house. It's really it's pretty strong. So now I really got to go look and see who this guy was. Let me bring
That's
up
your homework.
yeah, right. So I'm going to look at another chart and see if I can multitask.
Yeah, if you bring up the other chart,
Hold on, I got to erase this. Are you seeing John F. Kennedy?
yes, we are.
Okay, let me erase this. Hold on. John F. Kennedy, May 29th, 1917.
That makes sense.
Okay. Here's another one. So John F. Kennedy has the ruler of the eighth house in the eighth house. So the ruler of Taurus is Venus. And the first thing I thought of was, John F. Kennedy, it's probably not a shock to anybody. He enjoyed other people aside from his wife. Sorry, I don't know how else to say it. And that's what that reminded me of.
Gemini,
Now, that
not
doesn't
entirely
always have to
surprising.
do that. Like, that doesn't always have to mean that at all. I'm just saying based on what I know. And it's not like I knew the man personally. But that is a rather strong eighth house. It's a lot of charm, possibly a lot of, there's a pull towards a Scorpio energy. What do you call it? Magnetic.
Yeah, magnetism is what I was going to say, Claudia. Clearly, he had a lot of it, and people
Well,
remember that.
even the Venus can be magnetic. In
Yeah.
fact, that is Mars is more of a radiant thing, a charismatic thing that just oozes from someone.
Right. This to me feels charming, magnetic, just
Well, and look at that Mercury in conjunction with the Mars.
yeah.
That's somebody who talked his way into all the powerful relationships he got himself into.
Yeah. And the ruler of the rising is in the eighth house.
Absolutely is.
Yeah. Power. Remember how you use that, that's up to you. So that one I thought was so like, wow, this is a big one. So these little, I've started to play around with the midpoints and putting them in my charts, just started today. So just ignore them for now. These little points right here, this one and this one, I'm trying to really study them because I found that once I discovered what one does, I got kind of into a rabbit hole with midpoints. Let's look at, did anybody find
Oh,
anything?
can you show that chart one more time?
Yeah.
Interesting. He has Jupiter that would be conjunct the fixed star Algol, and that could definitely be connected to an assassination dealing with the head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I noticed with the charts, except for the one that the Franklin Roosevelt that I just, was it Frank Roosevelt? Whoever I just showed.
And by the way, Ray looked that up for you.
Thank you,
Not
Ray.
not only he, but also his brother were both into making organs.
Really?
So there was a harmonic connection where they were connecting with harmonies, dealing
Wow.
with music and the creation of instruments.
Wow. Thank you.
That's very much something that would be um, next level in a different way.
Absolutely. Here's another fellow for us. I'd love to see, Sylvester Stallone. I don't know that much about him, but I know that he is and will continue to be known for Rocky. That's his movie. I'd love to see, I didn't, but what was transiting during that time of his life where he really took off, because that changed everything for him. He was an actor before that, but he had not worked nearly as, he wasn't an actor that you would even know of. That changed his life completely. And I'd love to see the transits. This is something else that I wanted to chat about, which was, what about when, you have especially the outer planets going through your eighth house? Because the faster moving planets, the moon, Mercury, Venus, they go by fast. They go by, depending on the planet, it could be every 2 days, every 6 months, every year. But Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, this is years. This is actually, this is a big deal. It's a big deal when you have one of those outer planets hitting that house, because every house is going to develop you in some way. But this can be a house where you can really, it may at times be hard. I don't know how else to say it.
It would be interesting to see the transit of Uranus that he holds in Gemini. I could see him getting the funding, which would be shared money, when it was going through his eighth, and then with the ninth dealing with motion pictures, that could have been the meteoric rise with Rocky.
Rocky is that old? He's going to have a Uranus return.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. I was just thinking the same thing, Claudia. Like, wait a minute.
84.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious? How can that be?
That's when the Uranus return is.
It just, I
Yeah,
know, it just
Gemini.
doesn't fit in my head. I feel like the 70s was 30 years ago still.
We
Me
get
too.
that vision in our heads, don't we? From a movie,
Yes.
from it just that's who they are.
And it's
Well,
just like branded in there.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
mind
I
seeing
would
Pluto
love to
back in Libra again. We could use that right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at some of these for, see if we can connect that kind of success, like just quickly. I mean, it wasn't exactly overnight for him because he had been an actor before.
Right.
But for us, it was seemingly overnight. But that kind of success, it's not like he really acted that much in these other big roles after that. And if he did, I don't know of any movies. He's not like Al Pacino or all the others that are like Dustin Hoffman, that oh, he did this and he did that and he did that. I know him as Rocky, and that's it. So that could
No
be,
Rambo in your memory?
oh, right, okay, I'm sorry. I guess he was in Rambo, uh, and that's it. But no, I'm sorry, Sylvester, if you're listening. I'm sure you worked hard. So this is, regardless, this is a powerhouse house of an eighth house. Like, this is like, oh my God, to have Mars there and Pluto is a big deal. This woman recently passed, sadly. I don't exactly know how she died. And it wasn't that long ago, but talk about inheritance. She got an I mean, she inherited, I remember reading this somewhere. It was almost like, so her father, Elvis, left her big, big money, but she couldn't get it till I think she was 25.
Yeah, I think it was in a trust for.
Yeah,
Left it in a
and
trust for.
I mean, I'm not gonna know because it's not like I know her or know her family, but that can almost be, it's like winning the lotto. You, it's not always a good thing. People kind of can lose themselves uh, when something like that happens. Uh, and having Mars next to the moon is not exactly easy to live with. I have Mars opposing my moon. I think this is also quite difficult to live with. Does anyone know how she passed?
Says that she died of a bowel obstruction. She was only 54 years old. I thought she was a little bit older than that.
No, she was young. She was
Yeah,
not,
was
she was
there?
young.
That was her nodal return at age 54. That was her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something to do with, I think, John, it said something to do with a heart attack as well. So
Hmm.
that and connected somehow into the
Yeah.
fact that she'd done a lot of trying to lose weight all the time, sort of thing. So
Oh, yeah, drugs. She had done the opioids. So,
and she, yeah, poor
That's what
darling.
that's
There's a
unfortunate.
documentary her daughter did that's, I think, I don't know if it's on Netflix or whatever, but there's a documentary she did on her mum, which is very interesting if you ever want to look at it.
You know, looking at solar arcs, Mars is 8 degrees from Chiron at 8 years old in 76 when her father died.
Oh,
Mars would have connected with the
yeah,
Chiron, and that definitely would have been a very transformative experience for her. So I imagine you can see a lot when you examine her Chiron. And there's Uranus in opposition to it as well.
yeah, yeah.
With Pluto, the Pluto Uranus conjunction is wide there, but it is still present, suggesting a sudden death.
Definitely. I remember watching interviews with her years ago. It, well, obviously it's life-changing to lose a
Mhm.
parent that young. Um, Actually, now that I think about it, I wanted to see what Princess Diana's son's charts looked like when I was thinking about tonight. Because I also, I'm very interested in people who lose a parent young. I think that is so significant and so life-changing that,
It is a trauma
yeah, yeah,
and a transformation.
yeah.
And that is one of the things about eighth house people. They tend to have a strong connection with death in general.
Mm-hmm.
it's not always about their own.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And half the time it is, half the time I think it can be traumatic. Not always, but it can be. So, are you guys familiar with Alice Walker?
I will say I only heard of the one
Alice Walker was a
title.
really famous writer. I will go on to our very own Rick. But Alice Walker was a really famous writer. She wrote really, she was a writer, I want to say in the 70s and or 80s. I mean, when her books became big. She was on Oprah quite a few times. Very soulful writer.
I think
African
that book
American
that you
woman.
mentioned about the bluest eye
Yeah.
had a remarkable effect on readers.
And I want to say Maya Angelou actually has an eighth house. She's got eighth house stuff. I don't have her here, but I can look her up. So if we did know anything about Rick, I'd look at his eighth house. And to me, so look at the ruler of the eighth house, it's in the fourth. I would question, if I didn't know anything about Rick, I would say, are you in any way working with the healing arts or anything metaphysical or anything where you're healing or around healing? Because it is such a healing nature. He takes this very seriously. Saturn in the eighth house, and it's next to Chiron. So we can say, perhaps Rick had some difficult times with this combination, transformative times, but that could also be the reason why he is somebody that, I had a conversation with him a couple of weeks ago, and it was a bad day. It was a bad day. I was not right in my head. And it was so soothing to have a conversation with him. And I could see that that real counselor in him, that real nurturer in him, the acceptance, this is so Piscean, right? Like this is just so Piscean. And I mean, not that that was a shock to me. Of course, I already knew that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to him because that was a bad day. But it just shows us just how much we can see when we do have a look at even. So right now, all we're doing is looking at the eighth house. That's all we're doing. And look at how much information we can get, right? So even for those of us that, like, sometimes I hear when I look at it, it's confusing, it's overwhelming. Just look at one thing, because that one thing is going to lead you to question other things that may lead you to question other things. If it doesn't, that's fine, leave it there. But oftentimes it will give you more layered understanding of yourself and then other people. And understanding other people, to me, is chef's kiss. It is. I'm going to show you an example of that in a minute. But
I will also say you mentioned that we should probably look to the traditional rulers. So
yes,
Jupiter being in the 11th house would show how that healing has been translated into astrology work because it's in
absolutely.
the 11th house.
Uh-huh.
The
And
11th house
that
rolls through
that
astrology.
wisdom that you bring into, I mean, obviously I can say into the group, into a group, but into your outer community. This is basically, how you're seen in the world. Plus, it's the midheaven. The midheaven is how you're seen in the world, and then move it up to the 11th house, it's even further how people really ingest you and how you are around others in community. It's a lot of, to me, Jupiter is wisdom, buoyancy, optimism.
Mhm.
It's lovely. It's lovely.
While we're here, I'm going to share some information that I've pulled forward in regard to looking at the 8th house. Everybody should also take a look at the planets that you have aspecting 8th house planets. So in my chart, you'll see the moon is in T-square to the Saturn 8th house, 2nd house stellium of Uranus, Venus, Pluto. And when I look at the effects of the moon in the 8th house, it's like it's not bang on harsh, but there is a soft representation where that energy is being pulled in by the Saturn connection. When I look at the Jupiter that is loosely square the Saturn, it's also, more so square to that Chiron.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be something there, but the really other remarkable thing is the sun that is in conjunct Saturn from the 12th. When I checked out some of the stuff with the sun in the 8th house, it does pull that energy in there. So that is a little lesson that I picked up just in studying the 8th house. I recognize that those planets in aspect, it would be kind of interesting to even look at how those things affect other houses. How do the aspects mimic a minuscule amount of them being brought into the house they're aspecting?
Right. It's one of those things I always have to remind myself of things like that, and also to continue to expand my mind as far as what these interpretations could be, because Jupiter in the 8th house could show up one way for Jane, and it will be quite different for somebody else with Jupiter in the 8th house. And it doesn't mean that we can't possibly put all the universal knowledge into one book and into it. We're humans and we're really complicated. So all these things I put on these slides, they're just the tip of the iceberg. This is a flavor, and it's really up to us that's why I consistently say the best way to learn is to watch the people around you, to watch yourself, to watch the people around you. And like Rick just said, to look at how these planets are looking at each other. All these planets are having a conversation with each other. Sometimes that conversation is like, come here, sit real close to me and let's talk. And sometimes they're in another room and it's not that much of an influence, but they're always having a conversation with each other. And how is that conversation? Are they merging? Are they fighting? Are they besties? It's like this is alive. It's like a plant. It's alive. Thank you, Rick.
And thank you for including the luminary midpoints.
I know, I was just going to tell you.
It brings to light the Eris opposition.
Yes.
And it so catalyzes why I'm regularly speaking about social justice issues, to the point that I've even done so on a national stage.
Yeah. This is just me dipping my toe in this area, but they can be so telling. And then relationally, like you and your mom, you and your wife, you and your boss, like what that does when you look at the midpoints, oh, that's another layer. That's, yeah. Let me show you, I want to show you this because I have no planets in the 8th house. But I want to show you this for a reason because, sorry, I'm trying to erase this stuff and I can't.
You're in good company, Claudia. I have no plants in my 8th house either.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're not alone.
So, despite the, oh God, I can't, I'm sorry. I'm trying to not make marks and I can't. Okay. I have nothing in my 8th house. But I just put this little check mark there. Forget.
No
just
worries.
forget that's there. Okay. What planet rules Sagittarius, which is on the cusp of my 8th house?
Dun dun dun.
Jupiter.
Yay.
Where is Jupiter? It's up here in my 10th house in Pisces. This is why I bring this up because I don't have any planets there in the 8th house. But in every job I've ever had, it didn't matter what I was doing. I was always told I'm basically everyone's therapist. And that's very, I can
Piscean.
see that. How, I mean, I used to have to tell people, listen, I have to work. I have to actually work because you have to leave my office now, which is great because I mean, I enjoy it and it comes naturally because I'm so curious about understanding people and I'm so curious about supporting them. But this is just an example of you don't have to have anything in your 8th house because you're going to have something in your 8th house. And what is the ruler doing? The planet that rules that sign. So I do wonder if we shall take a look here at the folks that are here. We can keep looking at examples, but do we want to take a look at some charts that are here tonight with us?
Quickly. Let's try it. We hit a little bit of Jane's.
Okay, I'll go quick. I do definitely want to take a look at this one because she's the reason we're having this conversation. And I'm so glad you brought it to us, Ray. So, she has her son in the 8th house. So I would be curious because number one, she's having a huge transit right now. And that's something else that I want to talk about. Oh yeah.
Pluto
No wonder
being-
we're talking about something she brought to our attention because this is huge for her right now. And it will be for a few years.
I have to interject for those of us who are familiar, that's one thing, but in the event that this is being viewed by people on YouTube who are not aware, the sun in this chart is at 1 degree of Aquarius, and Capricorn has slowly entered into Aquarius back in March of 23 and will be hovering around these early degrees for quite a while. So that's why there was a little bit of an openly raucous chuckle on this side when we're looking at transits there. It's a big one. It's Pluto.
It is a big one. Yeah.
So just since it wasn't clear for people who aren't astro savvy.
Yeah. Even the people that I know that watch astrology, sometimes they're not watching what the planets are doing on a daily basis or on a monthly basis. So for those of you that have any fixed signs, I'm sorry, anything in the fixed signs. So if you have Mercury, Venus, your moon, your sun in Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, anywhere from like 0 degrees to like 6 degrees, you are in the fire. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but I will say you're changing. Life is happening and things are happening in your life that are going to 100% show you a different, more empowered you, possibly with the years ahead. But that's not going to come from being cozy. You're going to be uncomfortable. But the one thing that I thought of with Ray when I looked at this chart, I'm interested in how she experiences her son in the eighth house to begin with. Forget the Pluto for now, because the eighth house is like a backstage house, and the sun is the sun. It's
A star.
yeah. So I would be curious to see how she feels this, because my first thought was, maybe she wants to be in the background, or life happens that way for her. There's something where, that eighth house sort of underneathness of it, and then putting the sun there, it feels like that's different. How do you experience this, Ray?
Can I first suggest that it is always going to be a house of hidden things? So there's a lot of the ebullience of the sun that is going to be shared only in the space of the intimacy that Ray chooses.
Mhm.
That will always be the way. And astrology is ruled by Aquarius as well. So there's probably quite a number of people that do not know Ray is more than a little familiar with astrology in her physical life, her day-to-day real
Right.
life. People do not have a clue.
I don't bring my tarot cards to church. How about that? I work at a church, so
So there's a
how about
perfect
that?
example.
Yeah, yeah. But to answer your question, Claudia, I guess like even as a kid, I was serious. I had to do well. I mean, in grades, just had a level of intensity that, oh gosh, other 6-year-olds didn't have, for example.
Mhm.
And when you're a kid, you're just yourself. And I don't know. I mean, over the years, obviously, you learn how to modulate and regulate and whatnot. But because not everybody can handle a sun in eighth house. A current close friend of mine also has a son in the eighth house, which is quite interesting. I'd like to look up like previous partners. I mean, I don't have birth time for like previous partners, but I'd be curious to see where they're like what was in their eighth houses.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's just kind of like and especially I mean Aquarius is kind of its own thing anyway, and then to have it
Augmented?
be in, I'm sorry?
Augmented?
Yeah, you could say that. That augmented by the scorpionic intensity. I mean, because I mean, mentally I think I'm right, and emotionally I think I'm right, or about larger things. It contributes to intuition. Um, Lots of transformations throughout life. I've had a lot of different jobs. I've lived a lot of different places.
Yeah.
It is
That's looking at the
inherent.
bottom of your chart, Rachel.
Yes, with Pluto at the bottom. Yeah,
Uranus too. That's a very tight Uranus Sun square you've got as well.
indeed. Yep. So
Super
Rick, to
active
follow
right
up.
now.
Indeed, yes. And so Rick, to follow up on what you said earlier, I'm gonna maybe do a little bit of a deeper dive into how, I don't know, the relationship between Uranus and the sun now
Yeah.
is playing out. So So
For sure.
thank you so much for that tip.
Absolutely.
Um, so
I would suspect it's going to give you the capacity to analyze and creatively understand how your traumas and transformations are trying to awaken you to your next level. If we look at it as the awakener,
mhm.
how does the strength of that energy challenge the sun to pull that energy into the transformation? It's probably got full of aha moments. Oh my goodness, why didn't I see this before? You know,
Yeah, very good. And like you had alluded to earlier, Claudia, I mean, there are some really great intense moments, but I mean, it's like, man, I have to consciously like um watch my darker tendencies. I'm not talking about drugs or promiscuity or anything, but yeah, I mean, I can see the temptation to do self-harm or things that would not
Yeah,
serve
yeah,
yourself
be
well.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
That
So and
Saturn as the ruler traditionally in the first house is
yes.
also something you'll want to look into
Mhm.
because it certainly has some considerable activations with its square to Pluto and also to Eris. And the emotionalism of Cancer for a Saturn can be, well, Saturn has a tendency of bringing a darkness to an emotional sign.
yeah.
That can be
I'm not
difficult.
always sunshine and roses, baby.
That's what that Saturn shows. Yeah. Yeah.
Saturn in Cancer is I
The
find
tough.
difficult. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
very
it too,
tough.
and it is. And the people that I've known, I don't know that many personally, but the there is it's tough to live with. That doesn't mean it'll always be that way, but it's almost like I find these people have to remind themselves all the time to be their own nurturer, and um,
You
that's
said
probably
something
not.
clever there. You said, and poignant. You said it doesn't have to be that way all the time. Saturn is the karmic teacher. So as you repeat and keep having the old lesson material come back up around, you get more familiar with, oh,
Yeah,
been here, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. So unpack what you learned and use it again because you have application.
yeah.
So the challenges that you face 20 years after you've faced it the first time and you've faced it several times in between, yeah, it's not fun, but you're going to get through it a little faster.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that.
Hmm.
I
Second time
noticed.
around is a little bit better.
Hmm.
Yeah, Rachel, I'll just jump in. Like, yeah, you are definitely not. I mean, I think we have this connotation of Aquarians as very like sunny, futuristic, lofty people, head in the clouds kind of thing. I don't see that about you at all. I'm not saying that's a negative. I think you just have that Taurus moon definitely gives you grounding. The Pluto scorpionic vibe definitely comes through very strongly here. So I think you have a connection with this, but I see you very much down here at this level, if your feet on the ground, and I think that's where you really operate.
Yeah, and to boot, she's just really still experiencing her Chiron return.
Yeah,
Chiron, I want to say, is
mhm,
at 23 right now.
it is.
You're still integrating a lot of
Wait,
Chiron return.
I see her Chiron at 20 degrees Aries,
Yeah,
so
so
she's not
Yeah,
quite there
Chiron's
yet.
at 23.
Chiron's at 23 Aries. right now. I mean,
Oh,
yeah. So what I'm saying is it's 3 degrees away, but you're
yeah,
still
right.
applying all those
Absolutely.
learnings and hopefully self-acceptance and healing. I mean, but you're also going through a lot of other stuff. So I'm really glad we looked at your chart. I'm really, really glad because this is one to learn from.
Well, and before Pluto, it was Uranus on top of my moon. So I mean, for me, it's just always something, you know. It's
You were right. I think you did use the word intense at some point, didn't you? If you didn't, I could see how you would, because it has been a lot. It has been a lot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you
You learn with grace and humor, hopefully.
yeah, exactly. Hopefully, that's exactly right. But if you can make it through this, you know, Pluto stuff, I mean, you have other stuff too, but I just find like it just shakes you to your core. And that sounds like the foundation of your identity and who you know yourself to be. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. That's not going to happen overnight, but
1000%. I found myself digging out old boxes that I've put off. I bought my house here in 2018, I think. And they're just some old boxes from when I was the caregiver for my mother, and like old like legal paperwork and just old pictures and things. And it's like, oof, I can see why I had to have some distance between, you know, when I moved to
yeah,
present day. So,
yeah,
but,
intense
you
again.
know,
A lot of emotion, but
yeah, yeah.
you hang
But
in there.
what Rick D would say, you know, like with the Pluto, with anything aspecting Pluto, it's like that's the time to clean out your basement. So
Yeah,
kind of took that advice to
Absolutely.
heart.
Absolutely.
yeah. I'd say continue doing that in every way, metaphorically, because
Yeah,
the more
basement
you
up
do
here,
that,
basement in here, and yeah.
yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
it's great. Thank you for letting us share you, and hopefully we get to see a little bit more of you. I love
Oh,
having you here.
yep. I won't be a stranger.
Yes, good. Let's see. So I have to stop to see who's here. John, let's look at John's chart. So one thing, if I don't have your chart, you're gonna have to put it in the chat for me.
You have
But
Linda's chart.
Do you have mine, Claudia? I can give it to you.
yes, actually, John and Linda are right next to each other.
Yeah.
So let's look
Okay.
at John's. Okay, so John is this is another dual one. I would look at it dual. You may not, but I would look at Uranus and I would look at Saturn. So he's got Aquarius on the 8th house cusp. So I would go look at where is Uranus. It's in his 5th house.
Yeah.
It so wide, very wide to his sun and Chiron, but I wouldn't even look at that so much, but I would consider that it's in the 5th house. And then Saturn is in the 2nd house. I would definitely talk to him about that. So Saturn in the 2nd house in Leo, I would say, perhaps that part of you. And then Uranus is in the 5th house, which is ruled by Leo. So there's a part of you maybe that has shied away from expression at times.
Just a
And
little bit.
yeah, um, And
You know,
maybe,
every time you see those overlapping themes, you can definitely believe they're reinforced.
yeah, it's like another punctuation mark. Um,
Mhm.
maybe at times there was a questioning of your self-worth.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Maybe that's why the opposition to the sun is wide, because he only needed a little touch of it to take it to heart.
Hmm.
yeah,
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would ask you, how do you feel that connection? And see, okay, so the ruler, let's say it's Saturn in this case, it faces the eighth house. So these these dynamics of, it's either, self-worth in a relationship, uh, trust, money, that kind of thing, where these themes might be coming up, not necessarily just at the moment, basically throughout your life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And do you find that, because Saturn, the more I like Saturn more and more, because I don't shy away from it, but I listen, I struggle with my Saturn, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But it does get clearer as to what I'm supposed to be doing as far as strengthening the Saturn. Saturn wants you to strengthen yourself, you know? So what is it asking of you? And do you find that as you get older, it eases a little bit of that doubt?
I think I do see that, Claudia. Yeah, and I have been. I mean, as you know, I have been speaking out more, and I think that's also, goes into my self-worth. And I think as far as, career expression, like, I'm a teacher, educator, and I've looked to
Yeah,
step more into that. So,
yeah.
but that wasn't always something I felt very courageous about. That's something that I've grown
Mm,
into over time. So I have
right.
been. I have been doing my Saturn, you can say, and
Good for
it's a little
you.
less intimidating at this point than it was when I
Yes.
first started out.
I
And
also see that connection of overlap occurring with Mars and Saturn in Leo in the second house, where you have the Sun Chiron conjunction in Taurus. So that sign indicating needing to find your voice is reinforced by the planets of the second house, suggesting it's really a big deal, buddy. And that's where you have to go ahead and find the creativity to express yourself. How can you creatively do it? Because Uranus in the fifth just demands you find a way to do it creatively.
That's what I've been working on. I mean, let me tell you, having those two in the second house, do you know what it's like? It's like one foot on the gas. I feel like this is something Rick D said a while back, but it's like having one foot on the gas, which is Mars, having another one on the brake.
yeah, yeah,
And it's
yeah,
just
I'm
back and
sure.
forth like that. It's like, no, I want to go. No, stop, stop, stop. And I've experienced that throughout my life and
Yeah.
various phases. One leads and the other one puts the foot down. And then Mars is like, nope, okay, let's go again. And
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's constant dynamic.
I think somewhere for the solution, it has to be authenticity.
Hmm.
When
That
you find the authentic truth, that expression will come easier.
I
I
really
say
I
feel
that
think
that.
it
because of the
is.
Uranian. The
I see it.
Uranian component brings that
Yeah.
Yeah,
forward.
I really feel
So
that. I haven't
listen to
always
this.
embraced it, but yeah, go for it, Claudia.
I don't know when. I think it's in June or July. Uranus will go into Gemini, right on top of your Venus,
Yeah.
which is the ruler of your sun. I don't know, but that sounds big to me. Or that sounds like a trigger point. Now, also, this is not going to
Mm.
happen right away.
Yeah.
Just because I'm playing around with this. The Sun and Ascendant midpoint at 11 Gemini is going to be triggered by Uranus.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that one.
Well, let's chat about it at some point because
Okay. Yeah.
because the Sun and Ascendant midpoint, I'm not sure what that really means yet, but I know that it's basically bringing your your core essence into how you show up in the world, how you're gonna how you are out there. And I already see that developing in you. I mean,
I've
just
used the sun moon midpoint to suggest a unification of the unconscious or subconscious and the conscious.
yeah, but this
So
one's
there's
the
that
ascendant.
unification. Okay, so it is identity then.
Yeah,
Identity with the soul urge, the soul's expression.
mm-hmm.
And that's going to be converging with which point?
Uranus. Not till a couple of years from now,
Right,
at least.
right.
You're my sun ascendant midpoint there.
Yep, the Sun Ascendant
Yeah.
midpoint,
12th house
which is right
cusp,
here.
interestingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but first we have this, and this is
Yeah.
the ruler of his sun.
Right. It's absolutely looking like this is a project that waited for this time in life
Huh.
so that you could do it with a 1-2 punch over the course of these years. You know what I mean?
You notice how he says 1-2 punch because it's Gemini.
Yeah.
1-2.
Yeah, there's always a duality with Gemini. Always one side. No, the other side. Well, how about both at
Yeah.
once?
Right, right.
I see you, Rachel.
That's awesome. I can't wait to just
Oh, yes.
watch.
The
Just
fact
watch.
Rachel
you
brings
both.
in the idea of the midpoint being in the 12th. It's
Mm,
going to be something that you'll keep very private.
mm.
It's for you to know about, which helps you to keep other distracting ideas out of your own personal understanding. You know what I'm saying? You let
Yeah.
in who you need to let in.
Mm.
That way you can make sure that it's your journey fully.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Totally makes sense. Thank you both.
Yes. Let's look at Linda. Linda, hers is ruled by Mercury, and
And
Mercury.
Uranus, the higher octave of Mercury, happens to be sitting in the house.
What do you mean? Oh yeah, in the 8th house. I'm sorry.
Right.
I was looking at something else. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Boy, that's a thinker. Linda is
Right?
a thinker and a
A
quick
brilliant
thinker
one.
too. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
With a
Mercury.
stellium, an 11th house stellium,
Yep.
it spreads over a little wide, but that's a rolling stellium easily enough.
Oh yeah.
Even a rolling conjunction with the Mercury there,
Mm-hmm.
with the Jupiter Eris kicker. And it's all reaching its release in that Uranus apex, trying to, wow, it's trying to awaken some incredible skills with transformation.
Talk to us, Linda.
It was like what you just said was the last big reading I had with Rick D.
Mhm.
That was a while back. I mean, we've done like little things, but we did a really big one. And we had never, we had looked at my chart dozens of times and we had never talked, especially in classes, we would look at things. We never talked about the Uranus. And one day he looked at it and he said, "Oh, that's the key to everything."
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it, and it explains a lot about how I am, because it's a, and I'm just now learning this about myself, is that a lot of times I say this thing and people were just, they're just gobsmacked. I'll say something and, I was in a meeting this week and I said something and people said, I can't believe you said that out loud. And I'm thinking, what? It's just the truth,
Yeah,
it's just the truth. And it, it's
I love that. What
there's
a
a
good
little
use of Uranus.
there's a little explosiveness in me that, and I don't mean it in terms of a temper, but it's like I'm going to say this thing and it's going to disturb people.
Yeah.
It disturbs people all the time. And when I was younger, I think, I thought that that was a defect in my personality. You know what I mean? That I didn't have any tact. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't really. I mean, I can be very, I'm a Libra, I can be very tactful, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times in the world we have today, tact is not called for. What's called
Right.
for is just, say it. And people say, oh, I can't believe you said that. Well, yeah, you have to say it. We can't just sit here and, you know, get abused. You have to say something. So, and he like Rick D also, it was the, it's sort of the apex of that, um, into that Jupiter Eris thing and then over into
Right.
that whole mess over there. And there's all like, it's all the big planets pretty much, except for Pluto, which is up there at the top. So those are really big.
But Pluto in Leo is in the same house that Jupiter Eris is in. So you're still experiencing an overlap.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
spiritually transforming how you will align to your nurturing spirituality. Yes, you'll nurture the spiritual process, but it's some big guns in there.
Well, I mean, and part of it is that, and when you say guns, what a friend of mine always said that well, they used to have a sign on my door and it was Xena Warrior Princess. Because I mean, seriously, somebody got me a card and put it on the door because this colleague of mine used to say, you ride to the sound of the guns. And I've been like that all my life. If there's trouble, I'm going toward it. It's just it's not, it's like
Yeah.
instinctive thing. It is not anything that I think about. When one time when I was, I think maybe 23, 24 years old, I was living in Shadyside, which at that time was like Southside today. And this friend of mine, there was a junkie trying to break into her house, and she was holding the door. And she had called 911, but they hadn't got there yet. So she dialed me. And we had rotary phones back then. And I beat the cops. I got there before the cops did because it was, I wouldn't just stay on the phone and say, "Oh, this is really terrible." I'm going to go there and try to help, and
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what that is. It's like not in the front of the house, you know what I mean? I don't want anybody to talk about it. I don't want to have a name attached to anything. I don't want to be on somebody's list somewhere. Um, it's like I want to act when action needs to act, and then I want to go back into my space. And
I
I don't
would
know.
definitely think we should remember that the 11th house, excuse me, the 8th house is the area of the unknown. Uranus is the planet of the awakener, but also has inspired rebellion. It inspires moving forward. It has this push forward energy that in many ways combines in that space, even though succeedant would generally be considered an a a feminine attractive manifestation, it turns into this masculinity where it rushes into the unknown.
Well, I mean,
Does that make sense to you?
it makes total sense to me. And just as John was saying, that whole second house business, on the gas and going forward is difficult. But for me, it's that it's inhabiting a Libra sun and
Mhm.
having this that sort of, and Venus at the top of the chart in the 10th
Mhm.
house, and then this sort of explosive, more masculine energy.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And I mean, one time, and I'm not at all, I'm not gay, and I'm never even,
But it's not a matter of sexual identity. It is a matter of energetic identity.
Mhm.
It is
because
Yeah.
radiant and expressive as opposed to magnetic and drawing in.
well,
You're not pulling people towards you.
one of my colleagues asked my boss, is she gay? And there's no reason in the world why anybody would think that, if they know me at all. But I can understand why he asked that question,
Mhm.
because he was a troglodyte and he had no idea that people could have masculine and feminine energy. That the same two things could, and most people they code, but
He's
they're just
he's
in a different balance.
he's living in a different century.
That's exactly
That's
right.
definitely not where we are today.
I know it's crazy. And
Um,
but it's a it's an it's interesting, but it's not always easy, and it makes it extremely hard
Oh, I
to
didn't think there was anything anybody said that would suggest it should be easy.
yeah.
I'd like it to be easy.
I want to I want to throw one thing out here for you, Linda, and Rick and Claudia too. There's a lot of discussion around Eris being the true ruler of Libra, not Venus, or it would be a co-rulership. But I just felt like looking at that opposition between Eris and your son, Linda, that also stands out to me. The moment you said Xena, if you remember, I think we all remember when
Right?
Eris was first discovered in 2003, I think it was. The astronomer who discovered it actually named Eris Xena at first, and it stuck for a minute or two. And I don't think, as we study the planets and all those of us who are astrologers, we don't believe any of that is a coincidence. So when you said
Right.
that and I saw that opposition there, I'm like,
Oh, there it is.
oh,
Yeah.
there it is. Conjunct Jupiter on top of that.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about
Yeah.
Jupiter, the thing I love Jupiter. It's like I wouldn't say it's my favorite planet, but I really, really like it because I'm so lucky. And I've always felt that Jupiter, I mean, I'm like seriously lucky. Like
Well, the fifth house
things
is
Well,
the
happen.
house
place
of
in fifth house.
speculation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good
It's
place
a
for it.
gambling house.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm very lucky. And my father was lucky. I mean, it's like runs in the family. But but oh, that whole heiress thing, that whole heiress son thing. So I love my chart. It's hard. It's a very hard chart. But this thing is, it gets me into difficulty sometimes because I'm
Yeah.
always way ahead of everybody else in my thinking. Like I'm thinking like 30 yards down the road.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
were looking at candidates for a vice president the other day, and this guy didn't come across very well to people, but that's because they didn't understand what he was saying. He was saying we have to transform American education, and no one is ready to hear that. And I'm the
Mhm.
one person I thought, oh yeah, he's the guy we should get, but we're not gonna because
Just wait with
Oh.
Uranus going into Gemini.
yeah, what?
I said, just wait with Uranus going into Gemini. It's coming.
Well, there's many things can happen. So, but thank you.
Yeah.
I think that the eighth house stuff is really interesting, and I also thought that today was helpful just to remind us to look at the house, you know,
Right. The
the
rulers of the
the
house.
rulers, but also the ruler of the planet that's in there. And if you don't have
Right.
planets, how to
Yeah.
continue to translate that. That's very technical, but I think it's super important that we,
Derivative meanings are very enlightening.
I
They
mean,
really make a difference.
sometimes I'm, like I have a massive headache today, and I don't know why. I was really trying to concentrate on, okay, what's the process here? And I so appreciate getting better at that sort of thing. We weren't as good about that with Rick D because he was busy being a genius. And, I mean, seriously, it was very hard to contain him sometimes because he was like way,
Right, right,
out there. And I
right.
think it's good that we're sort of doing some basic stuff and expanding our powers and skills.
Yeah, because then we can expand from there. Because we've had Rick and he's taken us through,
He's still here.
yeah,
He's-
Very
But,
much so, he is.
How many times have we mentioned him tonight? Like 5, I think.
I
Yeah.
know.
He's always around.
He's always around. He's never going anywhere.
Mhm.
you know?
Listen, you weren't here when I talked about it, but I saw a video of him and me and everything that I needed to hear today, he told me in that video. And I just I just had tears in my eyes because I just thought, oh my God, and I consistently talk to him. I consistently just talk to him as if he was sitting right here with me because I know that there are certain things in my life and certain things in my understanding that he would set me straight in 2.5 seconds. But he's not here physically, but he's talking to me and it's just wonderful. It's just, I feel
Claudia,
so lucky to have known him.
I see him smiling and I hear him laughing.
Oh,
And I think he's up there having a fight with the Pope.
Oh, I'm sure he's having some conversations there.
I'm
with Pope
serious.
Yeah.
Being fri-
Probably got some questions for him.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
I like
big
thinking
time.
about that. I like thinking about that.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. That's a great.
Yes, yes.
That's so
Well,
cool.
I do want to close out, but I don't want to ignore Anita. So Anita, I'd be happy to look at your chart, but I don't have your chart. If you want me to look at it, please let me know while I do this little announcement. So the next time we will meet will be on May 8th. I don't know what we'll be talking about yet, but we will announce that shortly. And reminder, if you want to do a video for Rick, please reach out to me and Rick C. Either one of us or both of us will be happy to coordinate and help you with that. So we can show it at our celebration of life, which is on the 25th of May. And if you have not responded to me, whether it be personally or in the Facebook group, whatever it is, just let me know. You can let Rick C know as well. We talk to each other. But it's important that we have a head count because we want to make it a really great day. Anita, did you want me to look at your chart? I saw you unmute and then you went back on mute.
Claudia, I'll send that to you.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
I don't want to leave you out. But
I
yes,
appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm
I do.
happy. Yes, I'm happy to look at it anytime. We're all happy to do it. This was great. I love this evening. I love this
Me
topic.
too.
We can absolutely
Yeah.
dive into other 8 house related stuff, but we'll be doing, seriously, if you think of anything that you want to know more about, listen, I'm a student just as much as you are. So it's not like I'm going to have the answers, but I can facilitate a conversation.
Well, I don't think anybody
Right.
stops learning
No, never,
because
especially not with this.
you may find it difficult to find a teacher at times. But when you have strong minds facilitating deeper conversation, those strong minds will come together and both of them will learn.
Yeah.
Well, and the
That's
most
why Rick and I did what we did.
Yeah.
the most important thing I think we have to remember is the more we look at charts, especially if we get good at looking at our own chart, we can start to understand ourselves better. And
Mhm.
when we have a better command of ourselves, then we can be more effective in the world. So,
Absolutely.
so I
And
think
it is a great place to learn the ability to read a chart. That and the people that are close to you.
Oh,
It's really
yeah.
helpful to look at those
It's super
relationships
helpful.
near you.
That's how That's how you learn constantly. Because then there's transits and then you see, oh, you know, my sister had this transit and what was going on in her chart, and you go look at the chart and sometimes you see it, sometimes for the most part you do. It's just never ending and it's always happening. It's just it's yeah, you will never stop learning. It's beautiful. Thank you all for tonight. We will see you
Thank
next
you.
time. Love you all.
Thank
God
you so
bless.
much.
Care, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Everyone.
Love you, Rick. Love you,
Take
Claudia.
care.
Much
Bye.
love
Bye.
Love
all.
you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Love,
Bye.
love, love.
Hold that. Get the recording.
Yes.